Hey there. So, today we are going to talk about trauma and triggers. For me and my own path, learning about this topic has dramatically shifted and changed my own life. And I really feel that it is a cornerstone of the ascension and integration process that we're all going through. So, what is a trigger and what is a trauma? Trauma is the result of an overwhelming amount of stress that exceeds one's ability to cope or integrate the emotions involved with a particular experience. Children don't have the same ability to deal with overwhelming emotions that adults do. So, just a look of rejection or scorn in the eyes of a disapproving parent, for instance, might cause a child to feel so uncared for or unloved or abandoned that they register the interaction as trauma. Because the trauma or emotions around the trauma have not been processed, it remains in the emotional field, and since we attract to us experiences that match what's in our energy field, we end up drawing to us situations that are very similar in nature to the original trauma. And these are called triggers. They trigger that same feeling that the original trauma caused. So, triggers are sensations, images, or experiences that provoke a traumatic memory. Let's take an example where a child feels this disapproval from his parent. And let's say he accidentally breaks his mother's favorite flower vase. And in a moment of upset, his mother flashes him an angry frown of disapproval, which creates an imprinted trauma within this child. Now, fast forward this child's life by 20 years. He now works in an office and is casually writing an email to a coworker. His boss walks by and flashes him an angry frown of disapproval, causing the original trauma to be triggered. Now, there are three different reactions that a person might have when they register an experience so fearful or overwhelming that they can't process the emotions associated with it. These are fight, flight, or freeze, survival based reactions, or fear based reactions. In a moment like this, the person loses consciousness and is unable to stay in the present moment. That's why they say a really angry person might see red and go unconscious as they attack someone. Or a speaker on stage might blank out and be unable to deliver their speech. Let's say the boss in the example comes to the young man's desk to question him about what she was upset about with him. But the young man freezes like a deer in headlights, and he's unable to say or do anything, or is unable to explain himself. He's caught in the trigger, and if left unprocessed, he will be re-traumatized yet again. So when you experience a trigger, it's your opportunity to finally process the original trauma and fully heal it. This is called integration, which is bringing these traumatic experiences back into wholeness. When a person does not choose to integrate a trauma when triggered, it's as if this trauma or wound grows in size, and it might make each time feel worse and worse. This is because someone who is not integrating this trauma is allowing themselves to be re traumatized again and again, and it's almost always unconscious. So, how do we integrate these traumas and heal our energetic field and become more of who we truly are and stop living in fearful reactionary patterns? Well, the first thing that you'll want to do is begin to notice which one of the three of these fearful reactionary patterns that you tend to go to. Now, you might do all three, and that's possible, but there tends to be one or two that are go tos for you. So, in the instance that I gave before, the example of the boy who froze like a deer in headlights, and then when he got re triggered as an adult, he also did the same, froze. Or maybe you tend to want to run away when you get triggered. Now, this might look like wanting to break up with the person you're with. just in the heat of a moment, or leave a community that you've been a part of for a long time because something triggered you and you got scared and you want to run. It could also just be in the moment. If there's an interaction that's very heated and you get triggered, you're out. You run away. You don't want to finish the conversation. Now, the third is you fight. So, fighting can look like different things. I know for myself, it's tending to want to defend myself or justify why someone is asking me a question. And maybe, for me, it's thinking that I did something wrong and, I'm triggered and needing to fight to make it better. So noticing, what your reactionary patterning generally is, and then trying to become present in those moments. So we're bringing presence into those moments where we in the past would go unconscious and go into those reactionary triggered responses. So I know when I first started working with this and working with my triggers, I would I would be in the trigger, it would happen, and then maybe an hour later or maybe a day later, I would reflect on it. And I would say, okay, well, that happened and I did the thing. I got triggered and I reacted in the way I reacted. The important thing is not to judge yourself for that, because guess what? You went unconscious and you didn't have that awareness in that moment. But the good news is that you can start bringing that awareness in little by little as you begin to observe what you're doing. And so for me, after a while, I was able to bring a little more awareness and presence into those moments and make choices that would help me move through in a more graceful way. And generally, these triggers happen with another person. At least that's been my experience. And so when I get triggered, a really good practice for me is to take a moment and breathe. And so let's say, you're at the office and you're getting triggered by a coworker or even a boss, and it doesn't seem, I guess, appropriate to sit there and tell your boss that you need to breathe. And so it might be literally that you excuse yourself to go to the bathroom, because if you try to continue a conversation while you're really triggered, it can get escalated, especially if you're a fighter. And so it's really best to take space, and so that's what I did. I used to work at in fashion, and I would go and take a bathroom break and go and breathe and just bring myself back to the present moment, and just kind of like even coo myself into a more peaceful and loving place. And generally I would just give myself love. And so I think of these moments as my inner child going into fear, because that's really what it is. These aspects of us still live within us. Our inner child is still a part of us. And so I would just go in and breathe and love her and tell her she's okay. And she has every right to feel the way that she does. And yet, here we are in a new moment, in a new space and time, and that I have her back, and nothing's going to happen to her. She is safe. And so when I could find myself in this more easy place, peaceful place, I could go back and reinitiate that conversation that I was having with the person from a much more grounded and peaceful place. Now, this trigger might cause a lot of pain and distress, similar to how you first felt when you were first traumatized. And it's not something that you need to step over and say to yourself, get over it. In fact, that's really not helpful at all. But if you stay in the pain and the hurt of that original trauma, you are not going to heal it. So what I suggest is, when you are being with your inner child in those moments, really validating them for how they originally felt, saying, it's really okay that you felt that you feel this now, that you felt that then. It wasn't fair and it wasn't okay what happened, and really help them feel validated in how they dealt with the situation. And then from there, broadening your energy, broadening your consciousness, broadening the way that you're seeing it, to this higher, a more elevated level. It's forgiveness. And had you never judged the situation, then you would just simply be in non-judgment. But really, this is about helping your child see that you can move past the pain and the hurt that this trauma originally caused him or her. And so this is a practice of forgiveness, to move past and beyond how you originally interpreted a situation. One of my most traumatic experiences as a kid was in middle school, when I was in 6th grade or so. And I sat with a group of girls at the lunch table every day. And we had been a group of friends that had sat together for many months, starting out my middle school experience. And there was a day that one of the girls basically just counted to 3, and all of the girls got up from the lunch table except for me and my friend. And they left us and they ran to another table and had 2 other girls fill in those chairs. Now, this felt like it killed me, especially as a middle schooler. I mean, it was humilifying. That's not the word. It was humiliating. And it was so painful. And it really brought up a feeling of abandonment and unworthiness and all sorts of, feelings. Now, I carried this with me for years and years and years and years and years, probably through my mid-20s or so, until I started learning these tools for myself and how to forgive and let go and move on. But this really did remain with me. And so an example of what might trigger something like that would be, let's say someone was having a party and they invited all my friends, and I knew this person, but I didn't get invited to the party. And that might, trigger that sense of abandonment or feeling left out inside of me. And I might go back into that hurt and pain that I originally felt. So that would be the trigger. Now, let's say the woman who invited everyone really, didn't think about inviting me, not because she didn't like me, it just hadn't crossed her mind. Or maybe she didn't feel like we were, good friends enough or close enough. And really, who knows? But let's just say it wasn't her intention to hurt me, which is really the case quite a bit of the time. And our triggers really make us feel like that person did this to spite me or hurt me. And we want to be mad at that person, but it's a blessing in disguise, if you will, of this, scenario happening so that we can heal that original trauma. It's coming up, it's being played out, showing us what's still in our emotional field that we can now heal and release and let go of. But, a different scenario might be that woman, didn't like me and she didn't want to invite me, and she wanted to make sure I didn't get invited. Now, In that case, I mean, maybe, whether I know that or not, it doesn't matter. But if that were happening, um, the way I see it is just that that person, um, they have their own issues. They don't have the level of consciousness or the understanding, or the capacity to love as deeply as some of us might, and that's really her issues in the end. So when you can really just forgive and trust that all is happening for your highest good, you will begin to release a lot of this heavy pent up energy that you've carried for years and years and years. There's one more practice that I wanted to share with you that really helped me, fully integrate. Let's use this example that I just gave, the trauma of being left out at the lunch table in middle school. Um, an exercise I did was I closed my eyes and I imagined each of the girls from middle school circling around me and one by one coming up and hugging me. And well, I can't remember if I said I had them hug me, but I do remember I had them each come up to me and apologize, for how they had hurt me. And then I think maybe I hugged them, each one of them. And, um, and then we all held hands in a circle. And I made sure that I felt included in this visualization. Now, our imagination is so incredibly amazing, and our brain, our mind, our body, it doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's perceived or what's imagined. And we really can heal ourselves by doing this timeline therapy, some people call it, inner child work. And so that really worked for me. At this point along my path, I would actually imagine, I might imagine that. And I might also imagine me telling them, I wish you all the joy that your heart desires. And this is something that Matt Kahn teaches. And I actually really love that, because the thing is that when we bless the world with the love that its heart truly desires, each and every sentient being, each and every living thing, anything in this world, in this universe, when we bless it with that love, that joy, we bless ourselves, because not only are we connected to everything, but we really are everything. And everything really is a mirror of our own consciousness. So we are really blessing ourselves. And when we separate ourselves from other people or things, that's really just the ego's perspective. It's one perspective, but that's not who we truly are. Who we truly are is so far beyond all of the ego games that we want to play, all of the separation, the pain, the hurt, the jealousy, the judgment. And so this is really what I suggest doing when you are on this path of integrating your traumas and triggers and becoming more fully you. So I really hope that this video helped today, and I am totally here for you. Please always feel free to reach out, and I love you. I hope you have a wonderful day ahead, and peace be with you.